All right, kids. I don't know. I have no idea how this will work. I had to go. I had to take it. And now I'm back. And so we'll see how this works. I might have to go again. If I have to go again, that's just it. We're calling it. What was I talking about? Gilead, books, propositional stuff. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to be sometimes things happen. I don't know what I was saying. Where was I before the phone call? Um, so I read the poem. Somebody comes in here. What was I saying? Ridiculous. I'll just start doing whatever I'm doing. So, I guess what I want to talk about then is there a it's not even like a universal, but it's a yeah, sometimes things happen. Jeff, I was talking about you in Gilead. So I love that book. Yeah, let's just go there. It was a lively conversation. I love passionate people. There we go. We're getting back into the flow. The guy in my club was very passionate about it. But then part of what the struggle is like, what do you, so this will be a good foray into the topic is like, what do you do when you very passionately, okay, and passions is passion and emotion? Um, because passion is related to yeah, the passion of the Lord. So patio, suffering, passion, etymology. Let's see. Christ's suffering. Let's look at some of this. Let's bring it up. Bring it up. Pull it up. I'm my own pull it up person. If somebody wants to come and be my pull it up person and sit in my house like CW did one day when he just showed up in my house for a live stream and just popped outside my window like a creep. Okay, is this working? Passion. Preachy. Oh, yeah. The connotations between preachy. Also, Rick. Rick's here. Evolving Soul Rick. If big shout out, big plug for Rick's first conversation on Mark D. Parker's channel. Rick, you have a crazy story. You have a really great story. I mean, it's a great randos. Anyhow, I loved it. And you've lived quite a life, man. I'm very thankful that you're in the corner. You're an interesting cat. So anyhow, yeah. Preachy, that'll preach. It's positive, it's negative, passion. It says like my Wi-Fi, unstable Wi-Fi? Why? What's happening? I should not have unstable Wi-Fi. Tell me if it's weird. It should be fine. I have a router right there and like a net thing and should have fiber. So passion, let's read this. I like to go back to the beginning. I mean, mid 13th century. I'm also sleeping on some Barfield stuff I gotta engage with from Nate and Michael Lady, which I have not had time to do because it requires reading, and I was doing other readings recently. So, like suffering, the specific sexual love by the 1580s, passion, any lasting controlling emotion, zeal, grief, sorrow, rage, anger, hope, joy, the meaning strong liking, enthusiasm, predilection. From the 1600s, the object of great admiration or desire, passion. So I do love passion, and passion, the passion of the Christ. It's like his physical suffering, enduring, transformation, metamorphosis. Um, that which must be endured. That which must be endured. I feel like all of this is very related to the poem that I was reading. That poem is really lovely, Charlie, and I think a lot of what you're saying in it is related to this. Interestingly enough. Okay. Did every angel rebel, if only for a moment, as if they remembered their own name? And in a moment you were without us, alone, all alone, all one, so that to bring us back you had to speak. There is a saying, he who has not been lost at sea has never prayed to God. When waves pull on the sky, the breath weighted to the ground and then flung, centerless, and every failed sense you become a question, and the only answer is him. Weren't you once above the waters? Because maybe you're down, maybe you're under the waters now. Maybe you're suffering. Maybe you're a different Charlie, right? Maybe you're Job. Maybe you're underwater. And maybe your quantum white stone self is above the water, walking on the waves of Leviathan. But your experience now is being under the waters. Transformation. Part of my podvig, I think, that word that I looked up the other day, which is like a Russian word for, I think it's transformation, is achievement, right? In Orthodox Christianity, podvig can refer to a way of participating in divine light. For example, Saint Simeon, the new theologian, wrote that a man through podvig partakes of divine light. But I think that's through your transformation, right? Transfiguration. It's a glimpse into that. But I think through your, how is podvig related to suffering? Your achievement, your overcoming? Christ made perfect by what he suffered? Some of my most intense suffering in life is not insisting on my own way. That's the fulfillment of my title of the stream that I had to close. And I think there's, and I've been talking about this in terms of my teenagers, which my wife was saying the other day, that sometimes they call 3-year-olds three-nagers because they're just difficult like a teenager. Except they're difficult in a way that is, at least to my mind and my consciousness, is more easily excusable, and I have a easier time understanding. So I'm like, you're 3. And so when you're behaving like a toddler, I'm just like, well, you're a toddler. And maybe I guess when you're behaving like a teenager, you're a teenager. But when you're full size and when you kind of look like you have the ability to speak and reason and use logic, you don't really, what I've really come to understand is that whole prefrontal cortex thing, like, that doesn't become fully formed until you're 25. That reality has started to move from a head knowledge to like an experienced reality knowledge because of, what's up, Cody? I don't know if I know you, Cody, but it's become more of a real experience knowledge because through my suffering, through my interacting with my teenagers and just being like, holy cow, it's a, um, and I think it's also it's a deeper empathy that I have all the time for God, because you can want good things for your children. Like my son said to me the other day, I don't know, he saw it somewhere on social media where he was like, your father is perhaps the only man in your life, maybe outside your grandfather or something, who wants you to do better than he did, who wants you to succeed better than they did. And perhaps in a good father would be just be like, on your own terms too. Like, I don't want you to succeed, and I've kind of failed at this. Like, I'd never wanted to be this kind of dad, but I'm kind of this dad. I want my son and all my kids to succeed in the narrative, in the vision that I have for them, that I think what would be best for them, but very and I have reasons for why I think it would be what's best for them. I think it most is attuned to their particular giftings and ways of being in the world. But like, here's the thing, is like, a gift is only a gift if it's received as a gift. everything is a gift if you receive it as a gift. And so like you can try to give a gift to your children, and if they don't want it, they don't want it. And there's no amount of desire or passion for me to want them to want it that can make them want it. Well, welcome, Cody. I'm glad you're here. And my wife and I were both saying how like we remember we got this new digital picture frame, which we initially got for her parents at one point, and they put up in their house, and it's kind of a cutesy thing where you can just upload pictures from whatever picture app you use to store all your pictures, that we can just take so many pictures with these things. And then you can just, through an app or through, I don't know, some medium, some web page, you can add to and take away pictures, and multiple people can do it. And it's kind of this cool way to just have an like a ongoing Rolodex of pictures, or like just constantly changing pictures of your family and kids and whatever in your house. And my wife was saying she looks at pictures of us from like 5 years ago, and she's just like, we look so much younger. And it's funny, like, I don't know, it's and I think part of it is just teenagers, I mean, part of it's life, part of it's teenagers, but it's just like they age you, that it's I don't know if it's stress. I don't really think that I was definitely not a consciously stressed person for most of my life. Like, was that somehow unconsciously hidden just because I didn't have as robust of a self-knowledge, perhaps. But I didn't have as much stress and anxiety as I do now with kids, because it just feels like so more, people talk about your kids as like they're, it's like your heart out there walking around, which I think is a interesting way. Yeah, well, and I don't know what you mean. I don't know what I said that made you say this, Stephen, like, says the universalist. But like, my kids in general, one of them in particular, like, I've been having conversation with my wife, which it makes me think of, like, is my universalism a kind of luxury belief that I don't really believe? Like, I profess to believe, but I don't really believe it. Or like I was even saying to my book club last night, because we were having this debate back and forth with this character Jack, who, like, I don't think this is really from the Gilead series. I don't think this is really a big stretch to say. And if you want to hear me talk more about Gilead, see the other stream that I just ended when I got my phone call, the phone call of death. But what I was saying about this character Jack is he was raised, he's a third generation. His father and his father's father were ministers, and he is essentially a well-heeled child who's kind of a favorite child in a lot of ways. His father loves him deeply. And no, I don't know if he's a third generation. I'm conflating. Anyhow, his dad's a pastor, and he had a good family life, all that stuff. He had all the privileges life could give you, and he squandered it. He had this deep sense of shame, which was a big topic that we talked about, and he saw himself as a constant failure. He calls himself the Prince of Darkness. Everything that he touched just goes to shit. And he kind of lived as a hobo, he just lived, and part of that was out of fear and insecurity of like, I can't, like, I'm bad, so I can't have any good things. And if I have any good things, I'll just ruin them. So I just like will separate myself from the world. And we were having this big conversation of parenting, like how much of that is on the kid, how much of that is like their parents' fault, were they enabling, how much of that was all this stuff. And I think this with my kids, and I brought up the parable of leaving the 99 for the one. I love that parable, and I think it's very true. And I think God is that kind of person. And then I think, am I that kind of person? And I'm very much that kind of person in my head. And this goes all the way back to the like OG Rose conversation where he said, you can only really have somewhat meaningful disagreement with people that are really close to you. And this is why I talk so much about your family, because like all of this, like, even truly, like, we'll get into political stuff, but even like love of the immigrant, love of your neighbor, love of whatever, love of all that stuff, that's all great in theory. Adam lives in theory, that's why I've been thinking about this Lauryn Hill song. But like, the theory isn't real. lived embodied reality is real. And so, like, this is partially why if you, like, really love immigrants, like, I don't know, like, at the most extreme version, like, have them in your house, or, like, you really like the homeless, invite them into your home. Or, like, whatever, like, that's where you're really putting your money where your mouth is. Like, I'm not saying everybody has to do that. I'm not saying, again, this is the question, is there a Christian political ethic? Can you absolutize any rule in the scripture? The rich young ruler, can you absolutize that and say everybody needs to give up all their wealth? Or, um, I don't know. I don't think there's any absolute answers to that, but I do know that I need to have, uh integrity and consistency within myself. And so, like, when I'm talking about Christian universalism, and I guess, Stephen, you can tell me if you remember whatever made you think of that. And I think, like, sometimes I have, so here's an honest confession. Sometimes I have a really hard time loving my kids and saying, like, uh and it's back to that Gilead quote of, like, keep me harmless, keep me alone. Like, I was interacting with Aaron from Morning Talk podcast on X about it because he responded to my tweet, or to my whatever it is, X post. And he was saying, like, that scratches my itch. And I love that. I love aphorisms. I love little sentences, little phrases that contain multitudes, that are just pregnant with fecundity. That just, because, like, that, keep me harmless, keep me alone. There's a lot being said in that. And, like, I could probably talk about that phrase forever. So, like, when am I the kind of father who's like the father of the prodigal? Because, I mean, in a sense, that's like the image of good parenting, correct? I mean, I don't know. Tell me in the comments if you think you disagree. Is the father of the prodigal son and the older brother a good father? Because, in a sense, he's allowing them to be what they are. He's not demanding. It doesn't mean that he doesn't have prescriptions and boundaries and parental guidelines and wisdom that he's trying to give his kids. But he understands that a gift is only a gift if you receive it as a gift. If your children decide to reject your gift and they just want your money, or they just want whatever they can take from you, mammon, you cannot serve. The prodigal son is about God and mammon. The prodigal just wanted he just wanted the transaction. He's like, I just want half of all your stuff. I don't want what you want to give me. I want you to be dead, and I want half your stuff. But also the older brother wanted that. He just wanted to get that by following all the rules. The prodigal wanted to get that just by denying all the rules and demanding it up front. But both of them were the same. That's like Tim Keller's great point that everybody's been ripping off since he wrote that book, The Prodigal God. But I mean, I doubt that's unique to Tim Keller, but it's an excellent book. I think one of the things that's the hardest as a parent and as those that love people um, is when is the proper discernment of when you leave people to themselves? If somebody is insisting on their own way, do you leave them to that? When do you leave them to that? And when do you push into that? Because that's one of those verses I kind of just want to read it from 1 Corinthians 13. I kind of want to just go back and do like a biblical study on 1 Corinthians 13. Stop it, computer. What is happening? 13. What version do we want? NASB is not that great. Let's go Holman Christian Standard. Let's try that. See if it's good. Let's share screen. Let's read it, because this is one of the things that I think about often. If I speak in human or angelic languages but do not have love, I am a sounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries, okay, esotericist, Like, what if you understand all mysteries? And what if you have all knowledge? And what if you have all faith? Because faith is better than knowledge, because what doesn't come from faith is sin, right? Faith is even like a deeper thing than knowledge, right? Think of Abraham. Think the man of faith. Think of Christ. Not my will, but your will. Not insisting on your own way. Or man plans his way, God directs his steps, or all that kind of stuff. And if I have all faith, so as I can move mountains, but if I have not love, I am nothing. And if I donate all my goods and feed the poor, here we go. If I bring all the immigrants into my house, or if I just talk about how we should keep them all in on Twitter, or if I order a Morris, whether or not you agree with that, and I don't do that, and I just love my family first, or if I give my body in order to boast, the what is Father Rodriguez in Silence call it? My glorious martyrdom. But I do not have love, I gain nothing. Oh, go away, ad. Go away. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love does not envy. It is not boastful. It is not conceited. It does not act improperly. It is not selfish. It is not provoked. Okay, God. Does not keep a record of wrongs. Okay. I don't ever do these things. Love finds no joy in unrighteousness, but rejoices in truth. T-Grog loves. He rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, endures all things, hopes all things. There's some Christian absurdism for you. Bears all things. In the name of love. One night in the name of love. That's not quite the same thing, but you get it. There's a lot of love songs that are written about bearing all things. Like, I would walk 500 miles and I would walk. Love never ends. But as for prophecies, they will come to an end. As for languages, they will cease. I mean, actually? As for knowledge, it will come to an end. Ooh, see Brian Cox, Rogan, talking about black holes. And that's apparently, I mean, he's the astrophysicist guy, but I think, is that what he is, an astrophysicist? But he is talking about black holes and saying that's what the current thinking on black holes is like it's a cessation of knowledge, a cessation of information. You cross a black hole, what's on the other side? No information. No information is getting out. Death of information. Death of knowledge. And black holes, I mean, death. Consciousness, ending of it. No more information. No more perception. No more light. Right? I don't know. For now we know in part and we prophesy in part, but when the perfect comes, the partial will come to an end. Okay, now this is written by St. Paul, when the perfect comes. Is he talking about Jesus? But he's saying, but when the perfect comes. That's like future tense. When the perfect comes. Later. When? So did Christ come? Or is he coming? Or will he come? Is he talking about the second coming? What's he talking about? How does the second coming manifest? Where is the kingdom of God? When I was a child, I spoke like a child, I thought like a child, I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put away childish things. Childlike things? Because you have to become like a child to enter the kingdom of God. Children don't really care about money, right? I don't think you really start caring about money until you have that fall in individuation in the, teenage years, when you start becoming an adult. And I don't know. Now we see indistinctly, as in a mirror, but then face to face. Now we know in part, but then I will know fully, as I am fully known, knowing as you are known. 1 Corinthians 8. Now these three remain: faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love. The thing I really want to talk about, though, is love does not, where is it? Insist on its own way. Where did it say that? Anyhow, you get it. Love does not insist on its own way. Jacob I loved, Esau I hated. Is that in the Bible? What do you do? Okay. What do you do if you think you're right about something? Do you insist on your own way? Or can you let your understanding of being right go to seed and let it die? I think there's a lot of people, like even people in this corner, myself included, man, who I think can talk about beauty first approaches versus truth first approaches. And they can talk about the kind of objectivism that we have in modernity, and that we've separated the perceiver from perception, the hard problem of all consciousness. And like, this is why you can be right and be wrong, or be wrong and be right. What if I'm right about all that and I insist on my own way, and in my pursuit of the truth of that thing that I know and my insistence on it, I don't love my brother or my neighbor or the person that disagrees with me, which is the last remaining acceptable form of bigotry, is against those with whom you disagree. How do we have, I tweeted this recently too, or X'd it, or whatever it is, that I don't know that you can have meaningful disagreement via text per se, in and of itself, because then the text becomes a transactional medium, and you cannot serve God and mammon, and the relation has to proceed and have preeminence over the text, over the relata. My boy Rod, I don't know if Rod's here, Rod Hare, we've been talking about this a bunch, and what does it mean for the relationship to be more important than your opinion about any said idea, even the ones that you value the most? And it's one thing in TLC to talk about these things. It's a very another thing to have these kinds of to what happens when your children, if you insist on your own way with your children? Is that what the parent of the prodigal son did? He didn't. The father of the prodigal son didn't insist on his own way. He let his son go. He gave him what he wanted. Was he a good father? I don't know. Is there a transcendent Christian ethic? Well, and I kind of got into this with Jordan Daniel Wood on I don't know. I mean, if you follow me on X, I mean, we went back and forth a lot about it, and I don't know how to talk about these things. I was very intimidated because Jordan's smarter than me. I mean, he is, and at least in certain ways, and he's one of those people that I have no problem saying is like, you're smarter than me, uh, and uh, and so then I'm like, what am I not seeing? And that's why I think the fundamental posture of Christianity has to be humility. You have to be willing to die and give up your insistence on yourself being right in order to love properly. And I think you only really see that when you have deep intimacy with people, which is why it's such a gift to have a family, because you have to do it. Like, either in a family, you will insist on your own way or you won't. And when do you discern those lines? I don't know. There isn't a rule book. Like, the Bible isn't a rule book. The Bible will give you wisdom, but then how you apply that into your life is yours to discern. Weren't you once above the waters? Man. Jordan is not smarter than you. It doesn't, even if I say that, it doesn't even matter. Intelligence isn't a virtue. Like, it doesn't bother me that people are smarter than me. I don't really care. Okay, I'm gonna come back. I have to respond to that. I have to do a pause. That's my wife's text ring. And I'll be back in a second. So I'm gonna put the link out. People can come in and play. My friends can come in and run the show if they want. Lance, yeah, come and run this for me for a second. I'll be right back, buddy. Break. Oh man, he wants me to run it?
Let me fix this.
Well, you don't have to run it. You can just look at comments or something. I'll be right back. This shouldn't take me too long.
All right. Well, I was just going to come in and give Luke some help on. He's talking about a lot of passions and virtues and so on and so forth. I was going to share a little bit of what Saint Basil talked about this. Let's see. What have we got? What are comments? Let's look at comments. Did he put the link out there? Let's put the link out there. He was going to put the link out there. What have we got? Let's come through. What have people been talking about? One of the things he talked about when he was talking about leaving people unto themselves, and he was talking about kids or something like that. I think obviously when it comes to adults, I think that becomes a lot easier answer because I think that's most all the time. But when it comes to a kid, like you can't, like if you have a 3-year-old, like you you just can't leave them to themselves, or you've got to put that versus your 18-year-old son or daughter. Well, then you probably give them a lot more leeway, and I think some people give that leeway more than others. I think a lot of that comes with age or maturity or whatever. But when he talked about the parable of the prodigal son, I was really, really impacted by that. And I love the fact that basically the son was saying, hey, I want this money, and basically going to go blow it on sex, drugs, rock and roll. And the father didn't say, oh, I'm not going to give you this money because that's unwise or anything else. He's like, no, okay, let him go do it. Just literally let him go do it. Which is wild, but I think it makes a lot of sense. I think practically, kids of a certain age, are they really going to listen to their parents anyway? I don't think so. But he needed to go out and live that life and learn those lessons. And ultimately, when he remembered who he was, when he came unto himself, and then he returned. So yeah, I think that's quite frankly, that is, as I have now 20 somethings, I had an intuition that, you've done your parenting. And at that point, it's like, you got to let them go fly. Jess uses the example of, you just got to let go of you've got to let go of the bike after you've taught them to ride. Sometimes you've got to let them go and they've got to go ride. So I very much have had that take, but when I, saw that in the prodigal son, it just really just was like, yeah, they've got to go out and live. They've just got to live their own lives and learn their own lessons. And, in AA, it's kind of talked about, by the way, this is easier said than done. Okay. But a lot of folks in recovery, their children struggle with the same things they did. And basically what they'll say is, you've got to be willing to let them have to live on the street. You have to be willing to let them to live on the street under the bridge so they can come remember who they are, like the prodigal, because they are going to have to want their own sobriety and wellness for themselves, or else they won't get sober.
Yeah, because otherwise that's that malevolent, feminine, enabling impulse where, like, if you protect your kids, like, keep me harmless, keep me alone. If you protect your kids from themselves and the consequences of their actions, they can actually never be transformed and go through their own suffering to come to themselves, to see who they really are,
Hey, I wanted to share this with you, Luke. Let me see if this.
Yeah.
So let me go escape that. Anyway, it's good enough. We can see there. So in St. Basil, like what you hear a lot about, because you use the word virtues and you were talking about passions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you were talking about this. And so we talk a lot about, certainly there's the passion, which is that suffering, which is the Christ thing. But we hear a lot about, and you mentioned passions, emotions, whatever, but as St. Basil kind of talked about it, is a virtue is the proper use of the faculties and gifts God's created inside us, using these gifts to turn toward God and make ourselves into his likeness. A passion, on the other hand, is the improper use of our faculties and gifts, turning them towards something that is temporal, created. I'll use a word mammon, as Luke might say, rather than towards the creator. And then, so passions are the opposite of virtues, right? And so, into the well, actually, guys, there's more passions there are. Yes, in the Orthodox Church, notice this, but there's kind of 8 mean ones, and St. Basil talked about this, and there clearly are other passions. But he talked about basically passions are the opposite of virtues, right? It's like going to like the wrong direction, or directionally, whatever that might be. And so you see things like gluttony and temperance, lust and chastity, avarice and generosity, anger. I like how the opposite of anger is mildness. That's an interesting opposite of virtue, but a mild. And so dejection, sadness is a passion. We would call that in recovery circles a sitting on your pity pot, right? And versus happiness, whatever, pride and humility. And so
having a pity potty.
Yeah, Evergreus Ponticus talks about how we need to practice of the gospel virtues leads to a gnosis, which is the knowledge of God. And so that's why the practices are the things that you do, and so on and so forth. And so I think it's both. Like you talk about the personal, like a lot of that is working on yourself, keeping your eyes on your side of the paper, right? Keeping your eyes on your paper, those sorts of things is certainly that. But it's also practiced out in relationship and in with others. And so, I think the whole judging thing, which is like work on your own passions and work towards your own virtues. And as it relates to particularly an adult, like leaving them unto themselves in many ways, like instead of running around telling them they should do this or they should do that or so on and so forth. So anyway, I just was gonna, and you dropped out again. I thought that was leading into, as you were using the terms passions, you were using virtues, and I thought I would throw this in here. All right, let's look at the
All right.
There you go. There you go. What do you think about all that, Luke?
So one of the things that I was thinking is Anselman had in here, no, passions are not the opposite of virtues. They're to be ordered by virtue. So I think it depends on, like, in this graph that you have, or this chart, it definitely looks like they're opposites. But the way that I was talking about passion before, because even like the passion of the Christ, I mean, you're talking about I think there's a definitional difference between passions and the way that you're talking about it, which are like essentially the desires of the flesh. Biblically.
So when the Orthodox talk about taming the passions, that's what they're talking about.
Right. Whereas, but even within Orthodoxy, there's a little, like, your chart is some of that, but like my understanding of passion, even kind of within an Orthodox frame, and this would be along with what Anselman was saying, is like, you could almost think of a passion as just like your animalistic, emotional, biological, response to stimulus and the environment. You get like a dopamine hit, or you get serotonin, or you get whatever. Like those kinds of responses that you have are fine. This is like how I understood the verse for the first time, like, be angry and do not sin. Like, anger is not a sin, because you're going to be angry. There are things that are going to happen that are angry. You're a biological creature. And so, like, there will be times that you're angry, but then what you're called to do with your nous and your intellect and your wisdom is to tame that passion and apply it, and to behaviorally respond to that true emotion. Like, that's a true emotion. This is something I even learned in some of my DBT stuff, is like, having an emotion isn't wrong. It isn't bad. I grew up feeling bad about emotions my whole life. There's nothing wrong with emotions.
Right.
What you do with emotions can be wrong.
Yeah, our actions, what we do. And so, like, it would look like this. So people, like, we all have, like, what's again, 12-step recovery, you'd hear like, what's your spiritual condition? And by the way, that can change throughout a day. And so if you find yourself road raging around town, flipping off everyone who's cutting yourself off, getting mad at the person in the in the checkout line or something like that, you're like, whoa, what's up with this? There does tend to be, if you through, and I think this would be the same thing in 12-step recovery or whatever, like through your daily practices and your connection with God, that you can find yourself, while those things are coming up and rising up, you're not flying off the handle and having out of control emotions. You can put yourself in a state of being that when those things just start to come up, you can catch yourself and put yourself into this is another wisdom thing from 12-step stuff, but it would make sense. There's this saying, pause, pray, proceed. So if you find yourself because you can sense, and this is really being in tune to where you are, like if you can sense that your anger is rising up, give yourself a timeout, take yourself out of the situation, like gather yourself. Don't just be a reactive person. And we can do, and part of that is like, that takes a lot of hard work, right, Luke? So like, you start off the morning with a God consciousness, you try and make check-ins throughout the day. If you're walking in that way, you're going to catch yourself quicker. You're going to be more in tune to your agitation. And so if you are short-tempered or grumpy and your kids come home, like, you can almost protect yourself and say, hey, oh, wait a minute, I'm short-tempered and I'm angry. And if you have that at the front of your head when your kids are driving you crazy a little bit, maybe you're not going to just holler at them of like, why do you always throw your wet snow shoes right on the carpet when you walk in the, what are you doing, kids? You freak out. And it's like, well, yes, you can talk to them about throwing their snowy shoes on the carpet, but you can do that in a way that isn't unhinged,
Right. And that's such a and this is where I'm almost pushing back on, like, I've done streams before on the severity of Christian universalism, or even like my understanding of universalism, and Jacob will talk about how like there's no, like, I think it's like chesed in it, like no justice, but like that's not the thing we're talking about, even with George MacDonald or with your children, because love isn't enabling people in broken patterns where they're going to end up in their own personal hell forever. But at the same time, it's like the prodigal, or like being a father of someone who's an alcoholic or somebody who's abusive of things, is like, at what level you also can't dictatorially and in an authoritarian way control them, or even maybe protect them, like either negatively, where you like angrily and patriarchally in an evil way try to control them so much that they can't go through their own fumbling and stumbling and becoming. And you can't do that in like a feminine way where you save them from all your stuff. Like, my kids asked me this the other day. It was such an interesting phenomenon. My daughter and my son both asked me this question. I don't know where it initially came from, and all their friends were asking it. And it was essentially like, if we killed someone, would you help me hide the body? And like all their friends were asking it, and both me and my wife were just like, no, I would call the police. And I was just thinking, like, and my kids were so offended. Like, they were offended that we wouldn't help them hide the body. And one of my kids' friends said that their mom was just like, oh yeah, absolutely, no hesitation, I'd help you hide the body. And I'm just like, what the hell is going on? Like,
right. Well, I always told my kids, I said, there's nothing you could do that would make me stop loving you. I said, you could murder someone. I said, you'd have to go to prison. Yeah. I said, you have to go to prison, but I'll come visit you in prison. Like, no, I'm not going to help you hide the body, but, I'll be there for you, that sort of thing. I wanted to point out, like Hanselman's pointing out, anger can be righteous, right? And when I was talking about trying to control our passions or never take a whip to the traders in the temple. I wasn't saying that, Anselman. I'm talking about normal, everyday kind of interactions. However, we should be careful of it. Father Thomas Hopko had, as he went through the Sermon on the Mount, he talked about us about anger. He says, here's the deal, that very clearly Jesus talked to us about our anger, right? And in terms of controlling that. And he said, and people like to hide behind the idea of righteous anger. Well, he says, here's the deal. For you as an individual, we are so bad at determining when we're righteous and we should be doing it. As it relates to our own anger, we should probably learn to be quiet and really work on that. Now, when we're talking about if you see someone being harmed and oppressed, harmed, right? So if you see someone beating a child, to step in that moment on behalf of them, right? Well, that becomes a very different sort of a thing. And what it was pointing to was, it's like, yes. So, Anselman, is there a time for righteous anger? Absolutely. We actually end up being very bad. We get righteously angry more often than we think we're righteous when we aren't.
What is so hard about all that, Lance? Because, like, I agree with you, but this is, again, the theory versus the practice, and like the actual lived reality of all these things is like it's very easy to have these first principle kind of ideas about what is righteous to do in a situation and then justify anger with it. But like, so I'll bring up a couple things. One of them is like, I don't want to go down this road, but I'm just bringing it up because it's related to my previous title that's gone from the first stream that I didn't, but I've got to fulfill it. Graham, is there a political Christian ethic? And this is a little bit of what I was going back and forth with Jordan Daniel Wood on, because he's been interacting ever since J.D. Vance said that Ordo Amoris thing. And we're talking about immigration and all that kind of stuff. And I think people who are critical of the Trump, Elon kind of presidency and what they're doing with immigration and U.S. aid, all that stuff, they feel a righteous anger that I am defending the weak and the powerless because this administration is conveniently using different things to justify their, the damaging and the and like, granted, at scale, it's like they see themselves as helping someone who's beating someone, essentially.
Well,
like that's how they look at it. But I don't want to get caught up on it. So one other thing, you can respond to that. But the other thing I want to say is, like, have you seen the movie Prisoners?
I have not.
Okay. I talk about it all the time. I love it. It's one of my favorite movies of like the last 10 years. So it's with Hugh Jackman, Jake Gyllenhaal, Paul Dano is in it. I'm trying to think of who else are like the main actors in it. It's excellent. It's a thriller, but it's about child abduction. And oh my, I've thought about that movie more so than almost any other movie. That's why it's so valuable to me, is because it's like, it's a meditation on, and okay, spoilers, a little bit of a spoiler. A lot of what that movie has to do with is righteous anger and misplaced judgment based off of your misapprehensions of the objective facts of what's going on. And this isn't like a distant immigrant border policy thing that's like way far removed from you. Like, most people aren't practically dealing with that kind of stuff day in and day out because they don't live there and they're not actively engaged in it. It's theoretical. A lot of that stuff is either like luxury beliefs, or it's like virtue signaling, or whatever.
Unless your daughter gets killed by a illegal immigrant gang member that was led in.
Sure. But even that, this is why Prisoners is so much more so important, because what happens in that movie is a family goes over to visit another family at night, and the parents are hanging out, having a good time drinking, and the older kids are watching the younger kids, and at the end of the night, they go to check on the kids, and they're watching TV, and they're like, where are the younger kids? And there's like, oh, I don't know, they ran back to the house to do something or whatever, and one of the kids ends up gone. Mm-hmm. And so the whole movie then is trying to find this child and what happens, and the child is abducted and different things, and there's a lot of And here again, this is where the spoilers are. It's very clear to Hugh Jackman, like who has their daughter and what's going on and the police, and he's taking matters into his own hands. It's kind of vigilante justice stuff, but it's his child. Like, I mean, you understand it's a very intense thing, but like we be very careful in your judgments. This is why I think the Bible talks about, like, be careful, you who judge, for in your judgment you condemn yourself, for you do the same things, and by the measure you use it will be measured to you. That verse is very important, and I don't think that means that you don't take these things seriously. They're intensely serious, but like, I think when you judge and then you justify your righteous anger and your understanding of what you think is your understanding of what's going on, I basically think that's what's happening. I basically think almost no one accurately understands what's going on, but we think we do.
Well, I think so. I think that's so. I think I would concede that, right? I also would concede that um, government is not going to be our savior, right? Like, it's not going to be our savior. Paul had a really interesting video. He's around a lot of people who are really struggling with what's going on right now, right? And then he had that video, and he made, and it was on his slide. He said, these people, what's happening is government is their God. That's the statement he made, right? So because it's through the, activism and some of this other stuff, but like Paul realized, and we do understand this, like for people, would you say progressives in general, right? That has become an activism. And, but when Paul said that, I'm glad that he said that, because, and he also said what we're doing, what's happening right now is truly religious, and it is religious, right? And there are two different viewpoints on that. And so, and he had mentioned that one of the things he had mentioned early on is like these people, like they hated the government going around doing regime changes and so on and so forth. And they really felt they were very suspicious of all that. And yet when you would look at something like USAID, it's a CIA front, and they hide behind, oh, these people were doing all these good things, but actually there was a lot of grifting and corruption and stuff there. So
Yeah, I'm very nervous to get into all those details because I think we'll fall into the...
No. I get it. So, but let's just 40,000 feet. So what people think those things are versus what they really are, there's this massive disconnect, right? And there's probably, we can't see clearly on either side in some ways, right? I would totally grant you that. Although I do think more people are seeing things more clearly because they have access to more information than others, right? And so we clearly are at a place where a majority that come from the country, whether they were a former Bernie bro or whatever that, are like, we're done with all this corruption that's going on. And something has broken. You see this all over the globe, and something has to happen. But here's the deal. But I think what you're getting to is a kernel here. So even, let's say, no matter which side you're on, there is a problem of righteous anger on both. Well, both people feel righteously angry.
Yes.
Would you agree? Yeah, that 100%, right? So we're in this situation, and how many people on one side for the other? It seems like more people are here or there. I think there's some signs of there's been a movement towards one side versus the other. But what you're looking at is you see two sides that are both espousing righteous anger.
Right. And I think what's underneath that kind of culture war thing is that at the end of the day, both people, both sides, or both persons, or whatever, people with those opinions who continually participate in that dynamic, I would argue, are acting as if they're objectivists. They are not acting as if they believe relational ontology is the ultimate thing and that relation precedes relata, because they're saying, like, if you just had all the proper information and just saw it correctly, or just could see the truth, then you would ultimately agree with me on this opinion. And that spirit that I think is underneath both sides is why I think the game that both sides is playing is like they're spiritually the same pattern.
Right. So anyway, I like this. Tayo Kamani goes, when will MAGA stop playing the victim card? you one man, I think he's going to say, keep acting like you're the counterculture. Actually, I think what's happening is it's not the counterculture. The silent majority has finally stood up. So it's not the counterculture.
Okay, I don't want to talk about any of that stuff.
I hear you. I hear you. So anyway, let's bring it back to the righteous anger. However, one of the things that I talked to my wife about was, and this is where the Jesus prayer really helps me out, Luke. Like I hit it today or whatever. Also, the other thing that I like about Orthodox services is we pray for the whole world. And in that, that line where you pray for the president and the armed services and everything else. For what that made me do is when there was a president I didn't like and I was righteously angry for, it immediately brought to the front of my mind, Lance, you're supposed to be praying for this person.
Yeah.
Right? And so I do need to make sure that, and I think there's vastly different things that are going on now than would happen normally, but we all have to stay focused on keep the primary thing the primary thing. I can't lose sight of my prayer roles. I can't lose sight of doubling down on my family in the circles of influence where I do have impact. Right? Because that's what matters day in, day out, my relationships, all those other things. Despite it's okay to be interested in watching what's going on in the world, like when the Berlin Wall fell down and those other things. Those are cultural events that have broad sweeping impacts on us and other people. It's okay to do those things. But I would double down on, in the midst of this, as I am very curious and interested in all this, and I had this conversation 2 days ago, I need to make sure I'm doubling down on the things that are right in front of me too. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What's so hard is like, I look at some of the comments that are going on in here. I want to say this and then one thing, and then I want to hear Alan say, but like, it's like, even what people are talking about, Lance, don't get caught up in this. Please don't take the bait, but like Lance is toxic or he's not toxic, or like this side or that side. The way that I see all this stuff is like, I really think that what I'm trying to talk about is the thing behind the thing behind the thing, which is another way of saying I'm trying to save the appearances. Because if you get caught up in the appearances, all you're dealing with is the realm of idolatry. And I think demons and principalities are just laughing their ass off at both sides, who are just hating each other in the name of Christ. And I find it to be just, I don't know, sometimes laughable, but most of the time depressing.
And
Like,
Luke,
it really bums me out.
And that's why I also know there's a proper time and place for things. So your channel is not, okay, I'll just say this. Your live streams are not to have those discussions, because that's not the spirit of what you want to talk about. And by the way, the people mentioned here, that's why I have gone on Jacob's channel, because that's the appropriate time and place to have that conversation, because it's the conversation he wants to have, and people can tune in or tune out. So I would agree with you that I have very intentionally, you talked about it a little bit. And so what I want, and I'm fine with people calling me toxic. That's okay. That doesn't bother me. No, that doesn't bother me. That doesn't bother me. That's where we're at.
I'm slipping under
But I'm here to kind of give, at least I'm interested in those things. But I knew for me as a human being and how I live and move and have my being, that I needed to start doubling down on some of my spiritual practices to ensure I don't get caught up in the thing that you're pointing towards, which is don't get consumed by this into some sort of righteous anger. You know what I'm talking about? Like, it's something to be it's something I personally need to be on the lookout for.
Right. Alan, see what you say. Also, Rick, I would love to talk to you sometimes about demons, because I think we could come to some consensus on that, I think.
No, I just wanted to jump on and call Lance toxic. And I knew that if I screamed at him enough that he would change his opinion. So it's just one of those really important things. And or
if you call somebody toxic, all of a sudden they're just like, holy shit, I am toxic.
And it's just like, it's so effective is what I found, and it's, And not only, and then when someone says it's not effective, then you say that they're part of the problem. And that's the double inversion of just, like, oh, you're pointing out something that I don't like. Well, that makes you the problem. So, but it's funny. It was good. I was just listening to the PVK talk with Wokel Distance.
Local.
And
a lot of facts, a lot of readings in that one.
Yeah. Too many books. If it's longer than a tweet, how am I going to respond? How am I going to angrily respond if the video or book is longer than like 30 seconds?
I didn't make it past him showing off all the books he was going to talk about. Like I liked it because he was manic. And so I can tap into that energy quickly sometimes. So he was manically excited, like showing all those books, and we're going to talk about this, and we're going to talk about that and everything else. I didn't get into the conversation. Is it worth, did you watch the whole thing, Alan?
I think he's saying lots of great things. My problem with that sort of thing is like, and I'm not judging Wokel of being like this, but when I do that sort of thing, I recognize this spirit in myself where I'm just like, oh, if you have all these books and I read all these passages, then all of a sudden you will have the epiphany and the enlightenment to see what's really going on like I see it, and then the world will live as one. I'm just like, and that's not going to happen.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah. I haven't finished it. I'm like 30 minutes in, but yeah, it's funny because I'm very, like, I have a decent, what's decent mean? But I have a somewhat okay understanding of church history because of like AP European history and reading.
I thought you were going to say bench press.
Yeah, I have a. Yeah. That's where I get my insights on the church. I'm like, I've got 400 pounds on the bar, and I'm like, what?
God so loved the world that he gave his only.
I'm like, the triune God is, the triune God is one. And it just hit me when I hit the 405 for reps, when I started repping out 405 pounds, I realized the triune God is one. And
deep squat epiphanies.
Yeah. But no, just the other thing is like, it is like, I don't know. I've been wrestling with how important this stuff is because I didn't even know the emergent church even existed or what it means. Like I have much of a zoomed out perspective. I guess I follow Aaron Wren more. Like I can follow what he talks about. But when you talk about the emergent church, I still need to watch. What was that video series that you got excited about? The YouTube. It's called like Muck or Moomb. It had some like, but it's like emergent. It was a YouTube series that came out of the emergent church. That you were
me.
Movie or something. No, you didn't make it, but you were saying you had heard of it, but whatever.
There we go.
Well,
Luke, I am really disappointed in you that you didn't break out seeing Britney Spears "Toxic" when that came up. That would have been the perfect segue for you to drop in a Luke sing. Do you even know?
I sang it earlier.
Toxic?
This stream, I sang it earlier. It's a great song. Nickel Creek does a great cover of it, by the way. Numa. Yeah. I never watched it. I heard about it. That's back when everybody was still into Rob. That's before he said things that got him anathematized, like made the thoughts inside his head outside his head, and everyone's like, okay, farewell, Rob Bell. But yeah, it's the immersion stuff is phenomenon. I don't know. I've been loving that Paul brought it back up because I just realized how formed I was by that kind of culture.
Yeah, I do need to watch it at some point. But I think that the other point I want to make on that is, and who knows if I'm, but like, it does. This is why you have to have the relationships at the level of like the individual of like. If the guy's saying everything and everyone's listening to him because they like what he's saying, and then he says something they don't like, well, of course they're gonna like. There's just no other alternative, which is why, like, if it has to be personal, you have to have relationships with people because then you can actually afford to love people for saying things you don't like. Like, I don't have time for if PVK started putting out cat videos instead of the videos he makes. I'm not going to be like, well, I have this one-on-one relationship with PVK, and even though he's making cat videos and he just, like, I will watch them because I love, it's like, that's not where the space is, and that's what the nature of virtual space is. And he's not my pastor, and we're not personal in-person friends, but if someone comes to church and starts saying things I don't like or something, then I can afford to have a conversation and be like, what, I don't understand or what you're saying. So I don't know. That's what makes it personal. It's like, of course, when someone who's pastoring millions of people says something people don't like, they're going to leave, because what they came for was what they were saying, not having a relationship with that person.
Yeah, well, and I think that's one of the things. It's getting back to Luke's, like I use the fancy term relata, like the relational and the personal, which is like, I mean, we have tons of people in our lives that we really like and care for that we disagree with vehemently on certain things. That's
Not
okay.
me.
That's okay. And, there are lots of people that I have disagreements with on lots of things, but I like them in the corner. It's whatever. We don't have to agree on every single thing,
When my kids, or my wife for that matter, disagree with me because I'm the biggest, I have a little tent in the backyard. And when they say they disagree with me, I'm like, out to the tent. You can come back in the house when you tell me I'm right. And that's what I think is, and because part of it is because I love them. I want them to be right.
Yeah. No. When we were at Northwest Estuary and I said something, I was like, I don't know if I want to become Orthodox. Luke actually pulled out a gun and said, "You see this? You see this? You know how easy it?" And I was like, I'll reread the early church fathers. I'm sorry. So it actually changed me for the better, I think. Now that fear will stay with me.
So,
Thank God.
Luke, one of the things that I love about you is that, I'm pushing certain triggers over here, but one of the things I like about you is you also have that ability to just push certain triggers in certain people and drive them crazy.
I don't know what it is. I want to let Rick come in and talk. We can get into the angels and demons things if you want to, or demons. But
I just came in because you said you had to back out. I was going to share the passive virtue thing. I'm out of here. Love
see you,
everyone.
buddy.
I'll take my toxic self out of this.
Oh my gosh! Get out of here! Get out
of here! That's right. Lance disagrees with me on some stuff. He's booted.
Banned.
Get out of here. I removed him, just so everyone knows. He didn't leave of his own volition. I removed him. But yeah, I don't know. One of the hardest things for me is, so I believe that a Christian should not insist on their own way, even when they think they're right, which doesn't mean they should necessarily shut up. It doesn't mean they necessarily have to be silenced, because that's violence. But I do think that we cannot insist on our own way, because anyone coming to the truth, it has to be voluntary. Otherwise, it's not a coming to the truth. It's coercion. And so you can't force someone to come to the truth. So you have to let them have their own way, because what's the other way? You are the dictator of the world. And so one of my biggest struggles is that, what do I do, in TLC or in my own family, when people do think you should insist on your own way, when they don't want to play the game with me I want to play, when they are colonialists, do I accept the colonialists? Well, I think I have to be consistent. So Rick, your talk, you have quite a story, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I agree totally with your personalism and not insisting on your own way. It's a practice. I get passionate about what I believe. I hope everybody starts thinking just like me, but I know that's not going to happen. But yeah, I'm out here in Oregon on the coast. It's raining and kind of cold, about 30. And I just wanted to say hi and hang out and sometime talk about angels and demons. I started doing I read Elaine Pagel's, I'm not sure, on Satan. And turns out that Satan used to be small s in the Hebrew scriptures. Satan was considered more like the idea of a stumbling block. You probably know this.
Yeah.
And then later on, toward the end of the Hebrew Bible, there was a lot of apocalyptic writing, especially by the book of Enoch was very powerful. And then Satan started acquiring a capital S, like a being. It's this
Yeah.
guy, it's this fallen angel. Well, the more I looked into that, the more it seemed to me that this it's called the intertestamental period, 400 years between the last Hebrew prophet
Right.
and the New Testament. And
Mhm.
the book of Enoch is sort of like the Dead Sea Scrolls, where you have this group in Qumran, and they've got what's called the War Scroll, and it's the war in heaven against the forces of darkness and light. And
Yeah.
that's not in the scriptures. That's considered Gnostic, but the influence from the Zoroastrian, Manichaean, Augustine, the influence is there in the New Testament. It's very apocryphal, and
Mhm.
this light and darkness, the angels of light and darkness, is definitely demons. I'll grant you, demons are all over the New Testament. But I did a Google search, and if you Google how many times is the word demon in the Old Testament, it's like 3 times. How many
Right.
times in the New Testament? 280. So this idea of demons gets real popular, and
Mhm.
to me that's Zoroastrianism. I just don't believe it.
So you think it's some kind of, you would call it some kind of like syncretism from other religions versus a kind of emergent real phenomenon that was implicit and now has become explicit. You think it's more syncretism.
Exactly.
Okay.
And same way with the I feel like in a lot of ways I'm somewhat more Jewish than Christian, because I don't believe in original sin, and neither do Jews.
Well, the whole Eastern side of the Christian church doesn't believe in at least original guilt. They
Right.
believe in, because I remember you talking about original blessing, and I'm like, that's a very orthodox perspective.
Yeah, that's one of the things I like
Yeah.
about Eastern Orthodox, is that they have a different understanding. And Augustine was totally Manichaean for like 10 years before he became a Christian. And so when he read when he was reading Paul, he just got all over, he just got all over that total depravity stuff. And I think that's a huge mistake.
Yeah.
We're children of God, made in God's image.
Yeah, it's I don't know, there's a lot of, I was saying this last night in my book club. The more I talk to my Jewish brothers, and we don't really have a lot of sisters here. I don't know what was, we had one here for a while, but she took off because her and Jacob had that big battle. What was her name? Can't
Oh yeah, I know who you mean. Yeah,
I'm blanking on her name right now, but I've just learned a bunch from them. I think it's fascinating. I mean, I even know the angels and demons things. I mean, Judaism definitely has that within it. It's just not, to your point, it's not spoken about as much, at least explicitly in the Hebrew scriptures. But it's also the same. Like this is something I talk about all the time when I talk about hell, is the main way that Christians understand hell, particularly in the West, is an idea that's very foreign to the Hebrew scriptures. Like,
right,
it's
right.
not the Hebrew scriptures are very I don't know, there's a lot of different ideas going on there. They don't have a really worked out metaphysical understanding of hell at all.
Yeah, it's more like the dump, the garbage dump, Gehenna.
Well, that's, yeah, the New Testament thing. Because I mean, in hell, they have like, in Judaism, they have Abraham's bosom, or they have like the idea of Hades, um, and so, or Sheol, I suppose, and
Yeah, where people are sleeping until the resurrection.
which I think is a very, yeah. If you just study some of the Jewish ideas of Sheol, I think it's a much, I don't know, it adds a lot of color to the kind of modern understanding that most people have of hell. So all these things are complicated. I think one way that you could understand, because like in your comments, if I was to talk about demons, one of the ways that I really understand demons, number one, I recommend the show all the time. There's a current show, it's on I think there's 3 series on Netflix. I don't know the main platform it comes from, but it's the show Evil. That is like the way that I understand angels and demons operating in the world, and they do it really well. It's really interesting, but it's the basic idea of the show is that there's a family, and the mother's probably the main character in the show, who has all these daughters, and her and her husband, and then her mother, and then the mother is I think she's a psychologist, but she works with 2 guys. One of them is a Catholic priest. He's studying to be ordained, but then he becomes a Catholic priest. And the other one is he's a black Catholic priest, and which is important for some things in the show. And then the other person is a secular but raised Muslim scientist. And what they do is they're hired by a local Catholic diocese to research miraculous events and demonic activity and different things. And it's such a great show in relation to like science and religion and faith and belief and doubt and angels and demons and technology and how all those things work in the world. It's so great. And it's not really like, some of it's pretty intense. I think it's like TV mature, because it can be like pretty bloody and gory, but it's also like somewhat whimsical and playful. Like it's a strange show, but it's really interesting.
I'll check it out. Yeah. I mean, maybe my thinking is more like egregores.
Yeah.
There's like,
Yep.
because I believe there's a lot more going on than we can see with our eyes, like telepathy. I believe in angels. We've been watching Touched by an Angel every night for dinner.
Nice.
I cry just about every time.
That's like, it's that old school, great, like 80s TV. There we go.
Yeah. But it's just the combination, I guess, for me, of people thinking, well, this world is just, totally depraved. There's nothing we can do because we're in the age of decay. When I hear Paul say that, I'm like, that doesn't leave any room for progress. I'm a progressive. I'm trying to instill the kingdom of God on the earth, and I have a lot of optimism. But when I hear people, Calvinists talking about total depravity and the world being just a big mess, and why try to take care of it? It's just going to hell anyway. So that's what, and then people, thinking that, well, the devil made me do it. No, I don't think so. Unless it's like an egregore, maybe a sort of an energy, but I don't believe there's somebody like hiding behind around the corner, trying to mess you up, but that's just me. I mean, what do I know?
Well, I don't think a healthy way to maybe go with that is like even internal family systems. Are you familiar when people have talked
I've heard
about that?
about that, but I haven't really checked that out. I want to do that.
Or you could think of like Paul's Consciousness Congress. Like, I don't think, like, what on one level, to me, like demonic influence or principality influence, like all this, like when you really go into the church or like Jewish understanding, like even looking at their Kabbalistic tree of life, really a lot of that it's not exactly the same. And I mean, I'm out of my depth here, but as like Neoplatonic emanation from like the one, in a sense. And so that kind of emanation, and I think this overlaps with a lot of Christian understanding of angels, which is primarily done by like Pseudo-Dionysius. I always forget the woman's name because I'm a misogynist. But there's like a 12th century abbess who did a lot of talking on it, and then Aquinas. But they have all this angelology, but a lot of it goes back to Pseudo-Dionysius, and And it's these realms of emanation. And you could think about it, it's like ancient cosmology. In a sense, it's not even disconnected from the planets.
Right.
A lot of it's connected to that. And so like but so those things, do they have, I think everything is related and everything's relational. So like they don't have separate existence from us. They are like in us and through us. And even
Yeah.
classically, like they go out to the Bible says the demons, they're cast out and they go out to the waterless places.
Yeah.
I think it's always been classically understood that like demons have no physical instantiated body, which is why they use your bodies, which is so like even ideological possession. When Jordan Peterson talks about ideological possession, that's demonic possession. You're possessed by an idea, a demon, a pattern that is non-material, that exists throughout time, that then is taking control of your body and acting in the world.
Yeah.
Like that, it's very simple and basic. It's stuff everybody believes, but I will go the extra layer of putting. I wouldn't deny the supernatural reality part of it, but I think that's also connected. It's like mind body stuff. Like when T-Grog will say like, well, that's just the brain. Well, I also believe in the mind. I'm not denying the brain, and I'm not denying their connection. In the same way with like demons and ideas, and so like part of that could be your internal family systems or your consciousness congress. Dionysius, like I think it came from Maximus maybe, but Dionysius related with it, like the angel and the demon on your shoulder,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
the right and the left hand of God. I mean, all that stuff is connected.
Yeah, I can see it as patterns, like you're talking about.
Yeah.
But when you say like they and personalize it, then I get a little. But like in the writings of Paul, in his day, the cosmology was all the idols that the pagans worship, like Mars and Venus.
Yeah.
Paul likes to call them demons.
Yeah.
So then, 2,000 years later, we're reading about demons, and it's like some buddies, some person that's out to destroy you and the world, etc. Before I forget, I wanted to mention that I saw a YouTube either yesterday or the day before, Peter Rollins speaking with Matt Segal, and it was really, really good.
I don't know. I'll have to. Was that a recent one? I'll have to check
it was
it out.
like 2 days ago, and it was on this fellow, kind of Rafa. But if you Google, if you YouTube Matt Segal and Peter Rollins, it should come up.
Okay. Well, how do you spell Matt Segal?
Mattsegall.
Oh, 2 L's. Come on, YouTube thing. Oh, I think I did see this pop up. Look at that little handsome devil with his mustache and soul patch.
Yeah, right. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah, it was really good.
I'll watch it because he's handsome.
And it's like, I know you love Peter Rollins, and I'm listening to all this, and I'm like, yeah, let's go join the Church of Fire and get castrated, and you talk about the prosperity gospel. Well, this is the disparity gospel. Like, you get people to join this. I mean, I like him for deconstructing fundamentalists, but when it gets into Freudian stuff, it's like, over my head. So
right. Well, I mean, I think Peter Rollins is over pretty much everybody's head, including mine. But I've gained a lot from him. And like that's the thing. Like Paul has said, every time I try to turn Paul on to Peter Rollins, he's just like, I don't get it. And I'm like, yeah, I don't either. Like I think part of it is like I think I have a fairly good gold sensor. Like I can sense value and stuff. Like even when I don't understand it, like I just know this thing is good.
Yeah.
And Peter Rollins has always been that to me, even though I don't understand it. So I've spent years listening to him.
Yeah.
And I just like, and I kind of get it.
Yeah, it's like he does all this negative stuff for about an hour, and then the last 5 or 10 minutes he's like, I spend my whole life trying to help people turn to God, the God, the apophatic God, the God that doesn't exist, where you can't ever fulfill. But it's like you can tell he's sincere about something. I'm just not sure what.
Well, he's hard because the book that I think he's working on or that he has done that he's looking to publish, I think his working title at one point was something like the unknown, or what is it? It's like absolute unknowing, nothing can save us, or something is the subtitle.
Yeah.
And it's just such a great, he's always done that kind of thing with kind of Cohen, paradoxical. Like one of
Yeah.
his books is The Orthodox Heretic, or he talks about like The Fidelity of Betrayal is another book where he's playing with a lot of this non-dual stuff, but it's also the Church of the Contradiction, where he thinks there isn't a, which is kind of like his ultimate thing at the beginning, is that he says God isn't, I think his contention, I think I would say it this way, is that God isn't ultimately, I don't know if he would say that God is at his core contradiction versus unity almost. He's like, there isn't some sort of absolute unity at the core of being itself. He
Right.
thinks
It's
it's
all
contradiction all the way down.
contradiction all the way down. Yeah. It kind of reminded me of Buddhism in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he's very along a lot of those lines, but that's where, like, I say this to Mark Parker all the time, like those kinds of, when a lot of people, I find this happen all the time. I think there's a lot of people who leave Christianity because they were raised in very closed, hard-lined, center set religious confessional beliefs, where they were like, this is what Christianity and God is. And
Yeah.
people had experiences where they kind of reject that, and then they go to something like Eastern non-dualism
Mm-hmm.
and Eastern religions. But I'm just like, there is, you get all that stuff in the church too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I think you just get it with, and this is where I've told Mark Parker, I mean, I think, and this is where I disagree with like Sam Tiedemann when we're talking about Trinitarian stuff, like, you're just not going to get, not that you need to have a cohesive system to make sense of stuff, but like the metaphysics of the incarnation, like there aren't better metaphysics. I don't think.
Exactly. It's the most beautiful metaphysic.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so I don't, and I think it's very, and it's not just like some sort of historic Jesus in the past thing. Like it has a, like you even get that in the East. Like you're talking about traditionalism versus being a progressivist. And that's often where the lines in like the blue church in America fall. Like, are you going to be a sola scriptura traditional conservative, or are you going to be like a progressivist, future looking, liberal minded Christian? And I'm like, well, see, like, and this isn't like some sort of apologetic for Eastern Orthodoxy, but like in Orthodoxy, I think you get that. That's like the faithful innovation of, like, there's a, Jonathan Peugeot had a conversation, and it was about liturgical art. He had it with Andrew Gould. I'll put it in the comments. I'll try to find it. It was Andrew Gould, Peugeot, and I'm trying to forget the name of or remember the name of the other guy. Oh, here it is, Aaron Hart. So it's Sacred Arts, East and West. I'll copy it and put in the comments. A conversation with Aidan Hart, Jonathan Peugeot, and Andrew Gould. And in there, that's where I first heard the term faithful innovation. Because what faithful innovation is the spiral. So like, in a sense, you're staying faithful to what's come before. You're not denying your inheritance. You're not denying sincerity culture and what you've been given, the gifts of the past. But you're also open to the innovation, to the new and what's coming, and the further up and further in. There is a way that you can be, but like straight traditionalism is kind of almost like a restorationist. Like, we need to go backward. We need to like rediscover the Byzantine Empire. We need to go back to the 50s, or we need to,
Yeah.
but like, that's never been what Christianity is, in my understanding.
Yeah. Spiral dynamics. I love that stuff.
Yeah.
Developmental philosophy. And I love Alan's humor. Hi, Alan.
Hey, Rick.
Alan, you've been too silent. You got to
No,
come
I've
in
been
with some
listening.
jokes.
I tend to be too serious, and I like to get a laugh out of Alan there. Thanks.
I'm just listening,
Come on, funny guy. Listen, when we want humor, when we stop our serious conversation, we just look at you and we say, dance monkey.
Yeah.
Do a
Court
joke.
jester. But I mean, you guys argued me out of progressive. Now Jesus never laughed in the Bible, guys. I was just reading the Bible while you guys were talking, and he never laughs. And you guys should hate. I don't see either one of you whipping yourselves or hating yourselves, and that's a real problem when it comes to Christianity. And I think you're false teachers.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks.
you. Look at
So-
this, yawn God. He's here.
This is amazing because I wanted to get on, but like last time I looked, there was like 6, 8, 9 people on here, and
Yeah.
Well, when you
Thank goodness
this
that
is-
Luke is getting worse at his job. You
I
know,
guess,
finally we can. You know, I was hoping, I was praying
Listen,
that.
I'm trying to watch all the McMo streams that I can so I can learn how to do virtual hospitality well. McMo said that in one of his. I actually think McMo is really good at it, and I've been loving his streams lately. Also, check out his one last night with Sherry and Phlebas and Tim. There's some hot corner dynamics happening in there.
yeah, pray for Tim.
Yeah, but I don't know. Listen, when you intentionally, this is pyro hospitality. This is what I'm doing. I start a stream and then I just go and then I just shut off my screen and mute it, and then I just end the stream, and then I start another one to destroy my own momentum, and that's
Right,
how I get to talk to Rick. God works in mysterious ways.
Get rid of the chaff.
That's right. Yeah, we got rid of all the riffraff. If you're still here, you're real TLC. Okay,
Thank you.
Yeah,
that's right.
the OGs.
Yeah, I've been lurking for 3 or 4 years, and I remember when Christian Baxter started, I was thinking about starting something at the same time, and then he took off, and I'm like, oh, I could probably do that good. And then he got better and better, and now he's he's a real thing.
Seabackus is super good at what he
Yeah,
does.
yeah.
I love the people in the corner so much. Like even this guy, I've decided at some point I need to do some streams at night so I can hit different demographics. This is what is usually most convenient for me is in the morning, but I just need to make it work at night and like take a nap so I'm not tired or something. Like my brain is
Yeah, that would be
this
cool.
is your brain. This is your brain on drugs at night.
Yep,
Not that I'm
yep.
doing drugs, but
That'd be cool because I've missed a lot of years because it's like I get up at 6:30 and by then you're already an hour into it. I don't know what your time zone is, but
oh right, because I'm central. I live in Minneapolis, but you're West Coast, right?
yeah,
You're
Pacific,
one of those,
Pacific.
dude. You really do. Your story again. I'm plugging it again on Mark Parker's On Ramp Radio. It's fantastic. Like you grew up in like idyllic California coast, like before it was like popular and a big deal, and there were people all over. And then
Yeah.
you were like a Vietnam Marine vet, and then you lived in Hawaii for a while. I mean, you have a crazy story. It's really
Yeah,
cool.
it's I'm grateful. I'm grateful for my life. I don't know if you saw Mark Parker with the Catholic young man yesterday or the day before.
I have not. I started it and I haven't finished it, but yeah.
Yeah, just a totally different. It actually depressed me a little bit because it was so beautiful. It's like he had single-minded, like, I want to be a good Catholic, and he goes to seminary and he's living with these other men that are praying every day. It reminded me of like going to India and being in an ashram, only Catholic style. And it's like for me, my life was like chasing girls and getting drunk, and then my girlfriend got pregnant and I had a family, and it's like I just felt like, man, I wish I would have. Well, it's I made the best decisions I could. I never look back and think I wish I would have done something. But watching that young fellow, I got a little bit envious because he has so much heart and soul connected to God in such a strong way. And but I've had my own way. So Josh, nice to meet
Howdy.
you.
Good to meet you.
Thank
I don't
you.
think I've ever spoke with either of you, but I recognize Alan. And
Hey, Josh.
sorry, my feed keeps cutting out, but Yeah, if Luke ever did a nighttime live stream, I would be able to have a more of a continuous participation, but I have to like jump in and out for my job. So, um, Alan, I know you're like a comedian. Do you do stand up?
Yeah,
Right now,
I'm sort of the
I'm not going
jester
to
of the
ask you to be
corner. I'm
funny.
the comedian of the corner. No, that's my job. Is
Okay.
other people
Oh,
are really smart, and I'm the low IQ funny one.
what's
You know?
what's crazy about Alan, like when we were hanging out at Northwestuary, is he's not funny at all in real life. Like he's kind of a drag to be
That's
around.
yeah.
true.
Like,
Well, that's what real comedy is. It's like extremist profanity, just the mundane.
yeah, he's really like on streams you'll see him where he'll say like, "Oh darn" and shoot and stuff because he's just very evangelical, keeping up appearances, but like not funny, super potty mouthed in real life.
Oh yeah, and that's what like even the
True.
next layer of comedy is just like saying cuss words. Like
Yeah,
that's what
yeah.
is the funniest thing.
Yeah, when he picked me up from the airport, I'm like, Luke, get over. I want to see how fast I can drive this car. And he's like, that's really dangerous. I'm like, no, I'm relaxed. I had a bunch of liquor on the plane.
Yeah.
You know?
And he's just
And
like,
then-
I'm like a rebellious, just like hot, crazy dude. And he
Yeah.
just was like swerving all
Yeah.
over.
And then, I was like, if you mention any of this ever again, but,
He was strangling me while he was driving.
yeah. And I was like, I can't even drink my Jack Daniels now
Cool.
because both of my hands are occupied.
He made me give
Yeah.
him the Jack Daniels as he was strangling me.
Yeah.
It was really terrible.
This is a
But-
rental car?
Yeah.
It was a rental car.
Yeah.
But I got like the cheap rental car thing, but somehow in their like cheap rental car thing, because somebody parked it wrong or something, was a sweet Audi, and I felt super fancy.
Yeah.
And I told everyone that
All right,
I'm rich.
who's the top
and I
three
just,
goat comedians?
Oof.
I mean, you got to go with
Norm Macdonald.
Yeah.
Norm
That's my
Macdonald.
number one. Norm Macdonald.
Yeah.
Number
That
two.
gets you easy points. I'll go with only stand up or anything.
It can be writing too.
I'm gonna go with my favorite, and whatever controversial. I like Louis a lot.
That's
I
my
think
number two.
Wow.
I think Louis is really good.
Reported.
Like his Netflix 2017 special. Like I don't know if I've ever laughed harder at anything. It's so good.
Have you guys seen his interpretation of the Jesus turning water into wine?
I don't think so.
Mm-mm.
You have to watch that. It's so
Okay.
brutal, but it's so funny. It's like such a gut punch that, I think that even though Christ, wasn't, he didn't laugh, but that doesn't mean he wasn't funny.
That's right.
Because his interpretation on that is
Deadpan actually
It's-
came
it's-
from Jesus. He was just like
No.
cracking jokes constantly, but never cracked a smile.
yeah.
Because he's
Yeah.
holy. I mean, you can't laugh at things. Like we've actually just been really sinful for the past 5 minutes, enjoying life and smiling.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a
Sin.
big problem. You think that we're going to be doing that in heaven? I don't think so. But
That's
get ready
right.
to be praying for the next trillion years. No
Okay, I gotta
bathroom
know
break.
number three.
I'll go because I love God with a clean comedian. But if you go to early Nate Bargatze, he's famous
I
now.
hate him.
But no, you got to go early Nate Bargatze, like the first stuff he ever did.
I know
Bargatze is good.
who he is now has tainted what he was.
Okay, well, you know what? I'm a Christian and I believe in forgiveness, and I'm so
you-
forgiving that I forgive your bad taste in comments.
Okay, so tell me, because I'm not like an expert. I just watched his most recent special, which I thought was good. I also like clean comedy sometimes. Like I don't need it to be clean all the time, but I like it because then I can watch it with my kids or something too. Because I don't expose them to nasty things. But is his early stuff? What's different about his early stuff?
He's less refined. He's like more like awkward. You can tell that like he's been coached up to be like handsome and he has good style now. But back in the day, he was just like really awkward, and even more the character that he's like like his whole thing is the character, is like the stumbling over words, is like the awkwardness, and they've sort of trained that out of him and made him like clean cut because like all the Oh, continue, Josh.
Okay, Alan and Josh, can you guys shut up? We've landed a big fish. We have Sam here. of
Sorry,
Christian
someone who
YouTube.
matters. Yeah, someone who matters.
Someone
Sorry,
smart here, finally. God,
I'm not sure if I
shut
see
up.
one person or three people. Sorry, who joined? I can't count the people that joined.
This is Sam the son. Where's Sam the father? Bring us some
He's upstairs. I like Dave Chappelle.
Sam Stock with Aaron Wren. Another plug. I'm here to plug things. It's very good. Chappelle is all right. Chappelle sometimes though, I like Chappelle and I obviously think he's good. But there's sometimes like some of his recent Netflix specials, I'm like that. I don't know. Like it was okay. There were a few good jokes in it, but like it wasn't a cohesive, solid, really great special. I didn't think.
I would say
And
Chappelle has
he's-
been in my top 3, but Cat Williams has replaced Chappelle.
I've never really listened to Cat Williams, so maybe I should. Because he's black, and I don't. I mean, I'm a
There
misogynist.
has to be a black guy in the top 3. I mean, there's no way there can't be.
Not a woman though, because women aren't funny.
It's
you
true.
know.
Right, not even the top 100. Not even.
Who's the funniest female comedian? I like
Maria
Nikki
Bamford.
Glaser a lot.
Maria Bamford.
Nikki
is way
Glaser, I
better.
think is. I like Maria Bamford. There's some funny underground women comics for sure, but no one would recognize them.
So my wife and I went to New York and we went to the Comedy Cellar, which was awesome. I invited Alan out to coffee and tripped him when he came to meet me because that's the whole reason I want to get together with him. But we went to the Comedy Cellar and there were some, God, I wish I was gonna look at who they were when I left. I don't know who the comedians were, but there were a couple girls in there that were hilarious. I should have remembered who to look.
Aren't you going to talk about how you and me and both of our wives went to Second City in Chicago?
Yeah,
that's a real thing
Sam?
that happened. Mm.
Sam is the only person in the corner that I've been on a double date with our wives, which was excellent. And
It was excellent. Yeah,
your wife is lovely, and
your wife is lovely too. You married up.
Yeah, I'm excited for people. I'm always excited because that's something I've talked about this before, but I'm always excited for people to get to know my wife because I really don't think, and Sam, you know this because we've hung out in real life, Sam, and I guess Alan, but I really don't think I'm different in real life than I am online. Like the whole pro Felicity thing. I'm kind of the same person.
I'm not sure if you're different in any circumstance,
Right.
imaginable than what you are in every circumstance.
But I am different around my wife a little bit, and family because it's I don't know. It's just like we're gonna be married 20 years this year. I've been with her for like 25 years. She's just such a old. There's such a like you don't really know me if you don't know her. Not really, you know. She's just such an integral part of my life. I mean, you do. Come on, Alan. God. Let's get out. Whatever. You're gone. Laugh at me. Yeah, Chicago. So the Midwestuary, August 22nd through 26th. I think I'm going to be there. Some people, like my wife, will be around a little bit. She's not going to come to the conference, but I mean, my family's planning on being around there. So
cool. You should have them buy tickets anyway.
Yeah. I don't
Benefactor
think so.
level tickets.
How are the ticket sales going?
Good. I think we have like 20 or 30 or something like that by now. Which, considering like it's really only been advertised on small channels so far, and there hasn't even been like a even like a PVK channel level announcement, is really pretty good. Yeah, And I'm impressed and grateful for the percentage of people that are doing benefactor level tickets. That's really nice.
Nice.
Yeah.
So then, because you're planning on doing depending on how the benefactor sales go, then you could have kind of scholarships or something.
Exactly. Yeah.
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 We haven't figured out exactly how to distribute those scholarships. We might just sort of start by reaching out privately to, corner people that we want to be there that might benefit from such a thing.
Yeah.
Or we might have applications or something like that. We need to figure out exactly how to do it.
Yeah. I only can fly private and because of my back. And
I see.
also I need like softer bedding, so that's pretty expensive. So I need to stay in
Gotcha.
like the Ritz-Carlton or better, of course. So if you wanna, not that you have to, Sam, I don't want to be rude, but
I mean, that's exactly what our benefactor money is for, for providing for people with special needs.
This
and
is essentially
accommodations.
TLC USAID.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, this is to give
Big Vanderclay.
high level accommodations.
I mean, most of the money
People
for
who
this
deserve
is
it.
coming from USAID. So, just whatever you need. If you need a private jet for your comfort turkey, then just let us know. We can make it happen.
Yeah.
As long as Doge doesn't find out first.
Mm-hmm. That's very true. Very true.
Stop talking about this stuff. We're gonna get that toxic guy to come back on here.
Is that Chicago?
Well, Luke, should I share some of my thoughts about vaccinations and climate change and other topics?
No, I can't. That's so. Have you spoken to your people yet?
I
Get that reinstated?
I have to. It's hard because I'm not in the YouTube part of Google, and there's 200,000 or something close to it Google employees, so I don't even know who to go and bother about.
I'm sure if you go to YouTube and you just mention my name, they'll know who you're talking about.
Yeah, sure. I still think it's hilarious that it was me saying something about it because I've published on the subject of COVID vaccines, scientific publications on it. So I think it's hilarious that whatever.
Then you were making a joke about it. And
yeah, because who's the funniest person in the corner? Obviously, that joke was way too spicy for the algorithm. Way too.
That's
spicy.
right. It was
I
you
think
and
it was
McMo.
hilarious for the record.
Are you close to Chicago, Luke? That you can. Go?
I'm planning on going. I'm in Minneapolis, so it's not it's not that far. I don't know. Well, we'll probably drive, I suppose.
Yeah.
Especially if you're bringing your family and your kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. By the time you drive to the airport, go through security,
Right.
get out of the airport, get in a rental car. It's faster to drive from Minneapolis.
We got to still roll with my Honda Pilot. We hit 300,000 miles this year.
Honda Pilots are perfect.
It's
Underrated.
It is a great car. The only thing about it that I'll be excited about a new car is the road noise, because it was never great with road noise, and at this point, it's just you have to yell at each other to have conversations. Because it's old.
What?
Yeah.
Oh man, I had a Honda Fit that was like that. As soon, the engine was just so little that as soon as you got above 60, the engine's way up in its RPMs and is whining, and it's not very sound insulated.
Hey Sam, I just wanted to say hi. I've commented on. I enjoy your videos.
Oh, thanks. I recognize your name. I think is your YouTube handle is similar to your name, right?
Yeah, Evolving Soul, or Rick Cossey.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for watching. I appreciate that. Good to see you face to face.
Check it. Did you hear me plugging multiple times this conversation is On Ramp Radio with Mark Parker? It's very excellent. He's had quite a life.
I should listen to it.
It's good. All right, gentlemen, I'm going to wrap this up soon. So let's.
Right. Well, I got to tell Anselman, I mentioned you in my most recent video that came out today. He got a shout out. So Anselman has to watch it. I think he's generally mad at my channel for, promoting heresy and falsehood and whatever else. But I gave him a shout out in my most recent video, so now he has to watch it.
Well, we probably have, for Anselman, we probably have 3 heretical persons on screen right now. But you're here, Anselman, because you are you are part of this. You are part of TLC, and MJ isn't because he's been banned by PVK. He's still on Sam and I's channel, and I appreciate Sam. You don't mind me sharing what you said about MJ, do you?
Go for it. I
Yeah,
don't know
'cause-
what I said, but I hopefully didn't say anything too bad.
No, I think you said like he's an interesting person. You don't see him as like exclusively trolling and psychoanalyzing and being destructive. Like MJ does make really insightful comments, and
Yeah.
they're a smart person, and I like people that don't think like me. I don't necessarily like people that over psychoanalyze me all the time, but I do like people that don't think like me.
Right. I agree. Some of his comments are more useful than others. Some of them are more personally psychoanalytical than others. But his comments are extremely thoughtful, and I like
Is
anyone
this
who's paying
MJ?
deep. What?
Is anger danger MJ? Okay, anyway, sorry. Go ahead. I cut you off.
Oh, I feel like there's some weird flip side of the same coin to Anselman and MJ. They have different but similar personalities. They're both highly engaged lurkers who haven't come out in public. They have strong opinions about the doctrine of the Trinity, for or against. So I feel like MJ and Anselman are some sort of pair. But no, I appreciate MJ. PVK has his own right to make his own decisions about those sorts of things. When I was, I won't say what, but when Paul Vanderklay and I were having dinner a couple of weeks ago when I was in California, we talked about MJ. So I won't spill the beans on private conversation, but I'll just say
he's
MJ
colonized quite a bit. There's all sorts of like PVK told me this once. This really, I don't know. This was years ago, and he was messaging me privately. I don't know who it was. I don't know if they're still around the TLC. And I can't even remember what they said. I should ask PVK next time I see him or talk to him. I'll ask him. But somebody was sending him emails and telling him to be leery about me and that I'm really not what I seem. And I can't remember what they were saying. They were saying all sorts of things that are not true because I'm pretty hard on my sleeve, head on my sleeve. Like I think like I don't know how I could be deceptive, really.
Well, you
but-
remember when Mary Cohen was doing something
Yeah.
like that to me, yeah.
To you, yeah. Did you guys ever
No,
you guys ever reconcile?
no, I reached out multiple times, but I think she sort of admitted that she didn't think that from her side that she could do it constructively. I mean, I don't like to talk ill of the deceased or anything, but I think for her coming out of Jehovah's Witnesses and having that be really traumatic, she was projecting a lot of that onto me, even though I'm not a Jehovah's Witness. I've never been a Jehovah's Witness. My theology is in many ways very, very, very different from Jehovah's Witnesses. But I think that she connected me with that in her mind, and that was a painful and dark place for her.
Right. And I think the deeper you go into it, and I've said this numerous times about you, but I've probably learned more about Trinitarian theology from engagement with you
Well, don't say that or Anselman will get mad.
than any other way. And I think, and you and I still you're one of my best friends in the corner and we disagree about it. But I've said this many times too, is I think whatever you see and whatever seed of the Logos is in the thing that you, I think, earnestly and authentically see and that you're arguing for I believe is going to be fruitful and generative. And I think it's something that people have to wrestle with because it's not like when people first hear you, I don't know. I mean, this is the apologetic I would make for people listening to you and engaging with your stuff if they want to. I mean, it's probably unhealthy for some people, but some people just, whatever. Be the simple person who just goes to church and loves people. That's fine too. You don't have to engage in intellectual stuff. But like the stuff that you're talking about is deep theological issues that because I say almost, I think one of my Lucasisms is every meaningful intellectual conversation is about the nature of the God-man relation. And that's essentially what we're always talking about.
Right.
That is
That's
Trinitarian
my main
theology.
subject. Yeah, exactly.
And
what is the relationship between humanity and divinity? That's like my whole channel's main subject.
but it's also like it's also like unity and multiplicity. It's being itself. It's like you're not going to avoid these conversations. And most people don't have a robust understanding of Trinitarian theology in general because it's complicated and sometimes counterintuitive. But I think when you go into it more deeply, it's I don't know, it resolves a lot too.
Yeah.
But,
And that's why I like David Bentley Hart is such a weird cat. He is I will say, engaging with his work deeply and thinking about it a lot, he is so intellectually stimulating in a good
smart.
way.
He's
really
guy.
smart, and he's like really like there's some people can be smart and just unleash verbal diarrhea that actually really isn't very edifying or thought-provoking or structured, but he's
very structured and precise,
well structured and precise and organized that you feel like even if you're still disagreeing with him, that he's giving you the structure to both understand him, agree with him, or disagree with him in a way that you didn't have before you were engaging with him. And so I mean, I think he's very weird, and there's a lot about him that I don't particularly like, but I can only compliment him in terms of how intellectually invigorating it has been to read his stuff and dig into it.
Because so the recent conversations you've had, so what's the homework video before you start your commentary on his?
Well, so I've got the Ascension of Isaiah video,
right,
which is
great.
Which is very helpful because he talks a lot of, but I mean, he does just like drive-by shootings of like really important and deep subjects that if you don't know what he's talking about, that it's easy for the bullets to just fly over your head, because he can be so densely packed and assume and ask so much of his audience sometimes. That is one particular criticism of him, that he does sometimes ask a lot of his audience.
Right.
And so that video was sort of like, I consider it like a prerequisite course for my first two commentary videos, because it delves into more deeply what one of the important side subjects in those first videos.
Right. And then his commentary, or your commentary, is on his towards monistic,
towards the light of Tabor, which is the light from the Transfiguration, towards a monistic Christology. And so he's got 5 lectures that he gave at Cambridge, and I'm going to do, I think, 4 commentary videos. I did 2 videos on the first lecture because in many ways it has so much in it. And then I'm going to do I'm going to try and do 1 video on the middle 3 lectures. But the middle 3 lectures have his engagement with Jordan Daniel Wood. And so I'm going to especially focus on what David Bentley Hart said about Jordan Daniel Wood, because, Jordan Daniel Wood is TLC adjacent or TLC close. And TLC, and also alive. A lot of the people like Bulgakov, not alive. Jordan Daniel Wood, alive. And so I'll focus. Or is he? Who knows?
Or is Bulgakov? Maybe he's fully alive, or becoming more fully alive right now.
Bulgakov certainly thinks that he's still somewhere becoming, or when he was alive, he would think that if he were still now, that he would be somewhere. Anyway, Bulgakov is also extremely dense, and I'm not a Bulgakov expert by any means.
That's more Grail country style stuff.
Yeah, sociology and but he does seem interesting. But I mean, at the end of the day, I think that David Bentley Hart, what he wants to be true would work better if he were a Unitarian, is sort of my point. I think that he's kicking against the goads of Trinitarianism to make it say what he wants to say. But it's also weird. I don't know how loyal he really is to Christianity or not at the end of the day.
He likes to really toy with aspects of Buddhism and stuff.
Right. And Vedanta, Hinduism and stuff like that. I mean, he's very syncretistic. But at the end of the day, I'm actually not entirely sure if he really thinks of himself as a Christian. I genuinely, I'm not trying to.
If he's moving away from doctrines of the incarnation, then he would not be.
but at some sense, he's still kind of a Trinitarian. He seems at some level committed to being a Trinitarian in some sense. He almost seems more committed to being a Trinitarian than he seems committed to being a Christian, which is.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, he wants to have there be a triadology in the Godhead and the divine somehow. He thinks that makes deep ontological sense. But I think he somehow views himself as above any of the religious traditions in particular. And
So he's
views
Protestant.
he is kind of Protestant. I mean, I really think that he's basically a New England transcendentalist is the thing that makes
That's
the
what you
most
think I
sense
am.
for him. Well, that's why I think you are, right? It's not an accident. But he does open the whole book with a quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson. So I'm not completely shooting from the hip to say that I really think that he's sort of like a New England transcendentalist post-Christian.
Listen, America is the theological city on the hill, shining light for the world. I mean, this is where the future of theology is in the West. I don't know, I'm saying that kind of playfully, but I don't, because there is some degree to where I relate to that, because like I said, and this is part of the faithful innovation stuff, and even like Bulgakov was not well thought of when he was writing. A lot of people didn't like the stuff that he was saying, and this often happens. Maximus, it often happens to saints and people that are later vindicated, and so, and even for us,
I think it's a sure sign of my future sainthood how well received I am from most people.
Well, sometimes I take solace in that for myself when I think like, it's kind of like what I was talking in a previous live stream, is like, you don't get away from choosing. Like if you want to go the barrel-aged faith, like the tradition of my fathers in like a regurgitative way, well, like the problem is like, that doesn't really work if you don't actually think that.
And one thing that's interesting that I really kind of admire, but is also probably one of the most controversial aspects of DBH, is I don't think he views himself as beholden to anybody's previous thoughts. But I think he views Maximus the Confessor and Bulgakov as peers that he could or could not agree with if he wanted to. Right?
I kind of feel that way too. And I don't think it's a kind of hubris, but like, I can't punt to, you can't kind of like punt to tradition or authority out of a kind of, I don't know, non-real, non-authentic. This is kind of the sincerity, authenticity thing, out of an inauthentic, because then you don't really believe it.
Right. And
you have to actually believe it.
Like the Ortho Bros online are like, basically, the saints of the tradition are in like some kind of intermediary place between you and God, right? But they are above you and you are beneath them. But David Bentley Hart doesn't think that way at all. He thinks that he is basically a great theologian of history that is on a par to interact with them for better or for worse as he so chooses.
Sam, I agree with what you're saying about viewing Bentley Hart as maybe he thinks he's above it all, but I would prefer include it all.
Include it all?
Include all. Yeah, that's what I'm about. Like what, you can prefer one mode, but still include it all in your heart and benefit from it. I love his book, You Are All Gods. And onward and upward, my catchphrase is evolve. Let's evolve together.
Right. Well, and that's part of, that's where like, it's not I wouldn't say that I don't know. I don't have enough like academic and scholastic bona fides and precision and ability to articulate the things in the way that David Bentley Hart says. And sometimes he can be a little, you have to let go of his, I don't know if it would be pedantry, but it's like he has an air, and part of it's just like almost the way that he speaks, where it's it can come across as condescending, and sometimes it's overtly condescending.
No,
where he thinks
towards
of himself,
Thomas. If you're talking about Thomas Aquinas, it's condescending.
Where he thinks of himself as equal to the greats in that kind of a like. academic meritocracy kind of a way, and I don't really have that, but I do have it in the very like authentic way. Is like, I mean, maybe I'm misunderstanding you, maybe I'm not, maybe I am understanding you, but at the end of the day, like, I actually have to believe it. So irregardless if you're a saint, like, it doesn't matter to me what you said. Like, even biblically, like, I mean, that's kind of the difference between what I say is like the Sunday school belief and the actual belief. There's a big difference between thinking you ought to believe something and actually believing it.
Right.
Those are different things.
Yeah.
Right. Regurgitating or having digested something to the point where it can come out of you, not via vomit, but via something digested and more useful.
Out of your heart.
Yeah.
All right, listen. I say irregardless. I know it's not a word. I misspoke. Speaking of pedantry.
Irregardless.
Regardless.
I know. Rod knows too that he doesn't. When you correct my grammar, I will get annoyed. But like, I get it. Thank you. Actually, I received your gift. My bad.
Mother used to do.
Yeah. Well, all right, boys. Let's boys, men, great men of valor. Let's wrap this up. This was good. It was actually fun, Sam, that you came on and you could play and we could do some of this chatting. I need to come back on your channel so that I can beat Dr. Bo Branson. I got to stay ahead of him.
Yeah. Bo Branson wants to come on again. He wants to give a knockdown proof against Gavin Ortland on why icons are historic. I'm like, I disagree with you about icons, but I'm totally in favor of any shots you want to fire against Gavin Ortland. Come on, let's do it.
I just don't. Something I have less desire to do in my like savior complex. And again, it's like back to the whole prodigal thing and rescuing people from themselves. There's certain people who I don't think want to engage in actual like star manning and ultimately good faith conversations, although they have a lot of the.
Can you quickly define star manning? I know that there was some like Twitter post or article that I was supposed to have read to be up on that new TLCism, but I haven't gone there yet. So could you give me the TLDR on that one?
Yeah, so JD Pick and Choose shared it with me on Twitter, and it's basically an article that like, so you have straw manning, and then you have steel manning, which is like a dark web term.
Yeah, right.
Weinstein Brothers
Eric Weinstein. Yeah.
And then he said, but even a next step further, which is just beyond like trying to say it the best way that you can and give the best arguments. Star manning is to assume the best of the intentions of the person in which you're engaging with, which is almost to like, is to see the best in them as a person, not merely their arguments, which I think is really great because it makes it more personal. You're not just engaging in the intellectual ego realm about ideas. It's personal, which I think
it's not just a propositional strengthening, but a personal strengthening.
It's a relational thing, and it's where you're going to the deeper level of relations preceding relata, and it's knowing as you are known. It's that 1 Corinthians stuff I was reading earlier, and I think that's really important. And again, that's where like the Sunday school answer. I'll say this overtly to Gavin, like my experience with him and watching his channel and the way that he does it, or like Ruslan, or a lot of ortho bros. I mean, I don't care what camp you're in, but like if you're engaging people in zero-sum, merely propositional terms, you're not, which is why I love the TLC stuff. You're not, I don't think you're actually having conversations with people.
So how would you starman Gavin?
Good question.
I think I need to wait a little bit before I feel in the mood to do that.
Yeah. I think it's just the grace to understand that he's operating in the frames and the modes which he has inherited in a sincerity culture kind of way from his peers and fathers and things, and understand like people can't not be where they are. But yet at the same time, this is where like I would somewhat, if you're going to put yourself out there as a thought leader, academic, teacher, like be careful, you who desire to teach, because you're
Yeah.
putting yourself up to be judged at higher standards.
Yeah.
And I think
Amen.
even in YouTube, I'm not saying none of this is me trying to be a teacher. I'm just talking about what I think, and really it's a community thing more than anything, which doesn't mean you can't judge my ideas, but I'm not sitting here trying to I don't know. I'm not deigning to teach people.
Well,
So
I
I'm
think about that with respect to myself. I feel like I've probably crossed that line and need to hold myself up to that versus standard. Yeah.
So Pickens is here and he says Star Manning is like reverse ad hominem, which
Gotcha. Yeah.
which is kind of true. And so I don't know, but because that's the thing is I don't really until you get to the point where you're actually doing some degree of Star Manning, I don't think you're actually talking. That's like what I would call non-talking talking. You're being beholden to, I think you're being a conduit for powers and principalities. And I don't think the conversations are actually going to be generative. You're essentially playing into some degree and facet of culture war stuff.
It sounded to me when I read it real similar to the sandwich technique. You establish a personal regard for the person first, as long as that takes, and then you speak your truth, and then you follow up with, this was great.
Yeah, I mean that's a big thing. People don't like being called out either, I suppose. I mean, I just don't, and that's a little bit of the limitation. This is part of my problem with Christian YouTube or status and trying to get clicks and even trying to make a career of it, because that's that really great. I think it's a Upton Sinclair quote, but it's it's really hard to get a man to see something when his salary depends upon his not seeing it.
Yeah.
So whether that's being a pastor or a businessman or in anything, you become captured to the thing. So if Gavin is really trying to make a go of YouTubing and making a career out of it and doing the kind of shticky stuff that he does,
And is mostly financially supported by his church.
oh, is it?
Yeah, I think he is.
Well, then, yeah, then you're really that's the thing is what church would ever, what institutional church would ever fund something like what I'm doing? Where I'm saying I want you to become who you need to be, not along any institutional boundaries and guidelines.
TLC,
Nobody's going to fund that.
Institution.
Yeah.
But guess what? That's very in line with my Christian convictions. So I don't know. I can't. Here I stand. I can do no other. The future of theology in the West. Me and Martin Luther and the New England Transcendentalists. All right. Well, let's shut her down, people.
Sounds good.
Thanks for coming. Appreciate it. Go check out Rich's video.
I really appreciate your stream, Luke, and yours, Sam. This is the most important thing in my life: talking God and doing God.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good word, buddy.
Well,
All
Richard, good to get to interact with you more.
Same here, Sam. Thanks.
Okay. See you guys. Bye-bye. Bye, kitties.